Lee, for the next session that we would like to do talk on holiday blues, holiday holiday grief, and we wanted this. It's going to be podcast, YouTube, and presentation on Facebook, our website, and all these things. So, since we have Dr. Nagaraj, Dr. Arshad, and Dr. Nick, so I want you guys to maybe Dr. Matthews to go in and start, and then perhaps Dr. Arshad and Nagaraj can join in with some maybe perhaps a clinical vignettes if they have, or some little focus on the mental health side, especially during these holidays. And Dr. Nick can join in with some case reports or something that that he wants to add to it. So, Dr. Matthews, go right ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to cover I'm going to cover 2 out of 3 topics, and I actually stole these from Canon Hospice Health Hour. In fact, it was December 8th, 2007, that we had a Canon Hospice Health Hour radio program call in, talking about holiday blues and holiday grief and holiday depression. So I'm just going to focus on the holiday blues and the holiday grief. Holiday blues are feelings of sadness, loneliness, depression, even anxiety around the holiday, loss of interest in normal kinds of activities are pretty typical for people. Symptoms vary. Pretty much any kind of physical, emotional, behavioral, or cognitive symptom is likely to occur. Headaches, inability to sleep or sleeping too much, changes in appetite causing weight gain or loss, agitation and anxiety, excessive or inappropriate feelings of guilt, diminished ability to think clearly, decrease in activities that the person normally would enjoy, food, social interaction, work, friends, and hobbies. They don't tend to last a long time, but they do occur. And there are, I think, several different reasons. One of them is fewer daylight hours. Seasonal affective disorder, which used to be in DSM and now in DSM-5, is major depressive disorder. Seasonal pattern is this pattern of having a lot of these kinds of feelings at this time of the year. And one of the things in terms of looking at seasonal affective disorder is one of the things that helps, that's easy to do, is to get out in the open. But unfortunately, with COVID, we can't do that as much as we used to, and so interact and socialize. And so one of the things is there's been a lot of information posted and comments made about the impact that COVID is having on people having seasonal affective disorders, and people who have had repeated episodes of seasonal affective disorders having an intensification of symptoms. The other major cause, another one, is more activities and there's less time. There's only 25 hours in a day. Oh, wait a minute, it's only 24, isn't it? Okay, well, there's an example. The other thing is non-traditional families. 25% of all individuals don't live. Only 25% of all individuals live in a traditional, 2 parents, 2 kids, and 2 dogs kind of environment. And people have, because of separations, divorce, deaths, remarriage, job-related separations, that happens. And then there's the extra cost. One of the things that happens is that most of us spend most of our checkbook And so when the holidays roll around, that just makes it that much worse on us in terms of handling that. And the blues can result from a mismatch between the high expectations that we may have for that perfect holiday, mixed, say, with memories of holidays past, loved ones no longer present with us, and the reality of the current holiday, much worse, I think, this year because of COVID. And it's not only the activity piece of it, but for a lot of people, it may well be the loneliness because family members who maybe came for the holidays aren't coming this year because of COVID. And so I think there's a lot of both expectations, um, trying to be perfect about the holidays is something that you really got to think about throwing away. And I can talk a little bit about maybe some of the tips for coping in a couple of minutes, but I'd be interested in hearing any comments that folks have up to now about what you've seen about the issue of symptoms of people with the holidays blues. There's a friend of mine who used to do this workshop used to say, we all know what the blues are. It's we do it in songs. Elvis down at Heartbreak Hotel. Or we talk about not being able to handle things and it's lost, or it's not having things. And it's not just having someone pass, it's a loss of what's a standard kind of thing that we always do at the holidays. And those changes have a big impact on people and how they feel and how they handle things that go on. B.B. King said, blues all around my head. And I think that that's part of the feeling of what happens when holidays come around, and the expectation is people are going to be happy. And there are a lot of people who aren't. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Okay. How about treatment?
I'll jump in. I would like to jump in very quickly.
Sure.
I think just two quick things. Memories. If we can help people appreciate the good memories, focus on them, be grateful for them. If we can help people, or at least help them understand that life changes, traditions change. I'm in a completely different tradition. I grew up in a family of 8 brothers and sisters. It ain't that way, and it won't ever be. Sometimes I'm alone on Christmas. But I also think that if we could identify that there is a certain amount of, there's always a mixed emotion at a holiday time. But one of the things that I guess I always like to try to help people do is, can I find peace without something? Can I lose something and still be at peace? Can life be different and I still feel content? Do I have to have all the things that were there before? Because as we get older, we may not need all of that. So there is a certain, with age, I think we can even become more at peace with holidays and the true meaning of what the holiday season is. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly agree with you about that. I think that that's a real important thing to do. Some things that you might do to cope with holiday depression: acknowledge your feelings, seek some support, friends, family, if you can. Even if it's, I'm hearing more and more people using Zoom to keep in contact with their families, and I think that's pretty good. Be realistic. What can I do and what I can't? Set some differences aside. Stick to a budget. It may be hard to do. Plan ahead. Revert to your childhood. I want you to be age 2 And I want you to learn to say the word no repeatedly, because you can really get the holiday blues when you overcommit yourself to doing one thing or another. Don't abandon healthy habits. Take a breather, even if it's just sitting down for a couple minutes. Forget about being perfect. And if you need it, obviously seek some professional help. In terms of a holiday grief, we think of grief as being a normal reaction to a loss. And that loss may, and usually we think of that as someone having passed, but it's also maybe those connections, especially that we can't do this year with other family members. And Nick, you mentioned that, the idea of maybe we don't have to have all this stuff. Everybody has their own way of coping with a loss. Some people may consider not celebrating the holiday as a sign of respect to a family member that's passed. Other people want to celebrate the season as a way of honoring the memory. And everybody has their own way. So I think, family members need to recognize that they all have different coping skills to deal with a loss, and to decide what will work for him or her, and then where we can come together and have common kinds of agreements, finding a balance between those past traditions and developing new ones. And some traditions may be too painful to continue, and so you need to look at new traditions that can be developed in memory. Allowing yourself to feel sadness, grief, anger, loneliness, or emptiness. The holidays don't remove the reason for having those kinds of feelings, and you need to acknowledge those feelings. They're part of it. At the same time, you need to realize that it's all right to feel moments of happiness and joy during the holidays. There's as far as other kinds of things that you can do, there's a wonderful article called The Empty Chair Syndrome, written by Rabbi Mel Gazer. And he said, we'll look around and those seats will be empty. So will our hearts. Last year they were here with us. This year they're not. What shall we do? How can we celebrate without them? What should we say? The principle we should keep in mind is that they may not be physically here anymore, but they are still here. Yes, we buried them or cremated them, but that was only their bodily remains. What made them so beloved to us, mainly their soul, remains to comfort and support us in our everyday lives. And I think that that's very important. Some things that people suggest: hang a special ornament to honor a loved one, light a candle. December 13th this year is Worldwide Candle Lighting Day. Started by the Compassionate Friends, the idea is to light a candle that evening in memory of a loved one. Put up a stocking that first year for the loved one. Consider, if you usually put things in the stockings, consider putting a photograph or a memory of the loved one, and then going through those with family members, maybe before a meal. Remember a loved one in song. Most people have a song that they associate folks with. Make and serve that person's favorite holiday dish. Rabbi Meltzer said that one of the things you could do is set a place at the table that first year, so that the person is there in spirit, if not in fact. Practice random acts of kindness in memory of a loved one. There's a kindness project that was started in 1977 It's called the Miss Foundation. It's a way of honoring her daughter's death. And some examples of random acts of kindness from this foundation, which can be found on the website. Buy or donate shoes or clothing for a family in need. Help an elderly person with yard work or grocery shopping. Visit a nursing home, sit and listen to some of the residents. Leave a bouquet of flowers at another child's grave in the cemetery. Pay somebody's electric bill. Check with your electric service to see if you can make a donation to help people with that. Volunteer time at a crisis nursery, animal, or a homeless shelter. Leave a very large tip this time of the year for your wait staff, because they have had their finances really cut. Knit or crochet a baby blanket for a hospital nursery. Buy a balloon bouquet and ask a nurse at a children's hospital to deliver it to a child who may need that and maybe doesn't have family members who are real close by. Pay somebody's bridge toll. Donate food and money to the loved one's favorite charity, homeless, animal shelter, home for abused women. Consider making a gift that lasts after the holiday. Plant a tree in that person's name. Establish a scholarship. Dedicate a bench or a plaque. One of the things I heard about recently is you can buy a star and go online and buy a star in memory of someone. So I think that that's something you can do. As I said when I started, I stole these from the Cannon Hospice Health Hour from December 8th, 2007. And one thing that my wife and I always did at the end of that program was to give some quotes that had to do with whatever the topic for the day was. So here are my quotes for talking about holiday blues and holiday grief. I will preface this by saying that Khalil Gibran is my favorite poet, so I'm going to give you more than one by Gibran, because he definitely was the poet of the 1960s. We never lose a deep love, for life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. Khalil Gibran. What we have once enjoyed, we can never lose. All that we love deeply becomes a part of us. Helen Keller. Remembrance is a form of greeting. Khalil Gibran. And the last one is a paraphrase from the Holy Sonnets by John Donne. When one dies, one chapter is not torn out of a book, but translated into a better language. Have a better holiday, even if you are dealing with the holiday blues. Comments?
Very well done.
Stick a fork in me, I'm done. Is that what you said, Nick?
I said very well done.
Oh, thank you.
Very well done. Thank you. Very well done. I remember when I was in graduate school, I said to my professor, whenever I'm depressed, the best medicine is to listen to depressing music. And he said, of course, then you start singing Happy Days Are Here Again, because you have a container. One of my favorite Christmas tunes is I'll Be Home for Christmas, even if in my dreams. If only in my dreams.
If only in my dreams, yes.
It's a powerful song. I love music, and I really agree with you about the singing. I know for me, one of the things you I know you spoke a lot of, but you know, my least favorite holiday is New Year's Eve. My least. And the reason why is because it always seems to be a downer, because we've had to die another year, instead of us ritualizing the great memories of that year. because every day and every year we are dying. It's almost like we need to reframe that turning of the page on New Year's. And I just want to mention that I think one of the struggles of Christmas, and I use Hanukkah as well, in any of the great religions that talk about love, remember, we're giving. Christmas is a time of giving because it signifies love. And when we're honest about the human condition, we're not able to completely love. Look at how dysfunctional families are. I had someone tell me just a few days ago he was finding joy in the fact that his family was not getting together this year because every year they end up in a political fight. And he looked at me and said, you know, I'm realizing to be accepting of life as it is and not as I would always have it, because God's got a different plan. And I just loved what he said. Not to say that families, but they are dysfunctional. We struggle with our families more than anyone when we gather at the holiday time. Don't you think, Lee?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you make that comment, because one of the ones that I skipped over was family gatherings with so many different personalities, needs, and interests. The quote that I use along with that is, you can have any opinion you want as long as it's mine. and so
yes.
You know, are these gatherings, family gatherings, are they like a soap opera or a horror movie?
Yes.
You know,
and then
Uncle Ted always drinks too much.
And then add alcohol. Add alcohol, because that's really very prevalent in our culture.
Yeah, it is. So, you know, and unfortunately, there's another one here in South Louisiana we don't normally think about, and that is we've had a bunch of hurricanes again this season, a lot more, as many more than we had in 2005. And so what you have is you've got a loss of homes or friends or family moving away, or the loss of those holiday trimmings, ornaments that were in the attic and got flooded out, that have been passed down for a couple of generations. Even something as mundane or everyday as a turkey or a ham roast can trigger stress and a feeling of grief. It's sort of like, you know, I had to go out and have my aluminum turkey baster sandblasted because literally, because it was, you know, it sat in water for a couple of 3 weeks. So there's all those kinds of things that happen to us. And you're right. I think you have to think about what are the positives that could be going on for you, and how can you do. In a Zoom meeting this morning, I made a comment about the fact that originally I was supposed to be in Connecticut this morning for a meeting, and I was glad I wasn't there because as far as I was concerned, cold and snow are both 4-letter words. And one person on the meeting didn't really understand what I meant by that phrase, but somebody else chimed in and said, well, you know, there's a couple more 4-letter words you could think about. You could think about a word like well, or love, or hope, or able, or will, or Lord. And so, Nick, I think you're right. We've got to help people focus on those positive things. I heard a comment made just recently about a family whose daughter was keeping a list of things that were happening through the COVID, and they were all things she couldn't do. And one of the things that the family did was to come back and say, let's sit down as a family and talk about the things that have happened that have been positive. And I think that that's going to be an important piece to getting through, especially the holiday blues this year.
It really does. It comes down to what we put our attention on. It always comes down to attention. Where do I put my energies? You said 25 hours and I laughed because I love to remind people we have 24, ain't going to get any more. So what are you going to do with the 24? And how are you going to spend it and how are you going to live with it? But I just want to also mention, and it may not be with holiday blues per se, but I do think it's appropriate. One of the things that I'm constantly trying to tell my people from time to time that I work with is you can. Many of us grew up being told you can't. But when we can encourage and tell people, you can do this, you can make the judgments, you can adapt, you can see the glory of life right now. I have one eye, Lee, one eye, and I am happy to have it. I'm happy to have it.
Yep. That makes good sense.
Where are the other people?
I wanted to chime in if I could.
Hey,
There is another 4-letter word, and it's called dash. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the poem that is named the Dash poem that might be added to the people that you get to speak with. It speaks about a person who attended a funeral and saw life in a different way after hearing all of the things that were said about the person. And the revelation came that the dash between a person's life and death is really their life and what they've been able to build the time they were here. So as people focus on the things that are making them sad and making them blue, the focus is really not on the life that a person has lived and the things, like he said, that you have done, that you did succeed at. And also a gratitude journal is something that's very popular in the internet world, because people have said, the more you write down what you're grateful for, it helps your focus again, look at what is happening in a positive light and not just the bad things or the sad things that may be going on. So that's something that, wanted to throw in there. That's
All
it.
right, if Dr. Arshad and Dr. Nagaraj doesn't have anything, then I guess I'm going to have to close with a few words of my own.
Please.
Well, I'm gonna jump in with two more, and one has to do with the one that was just mentioned. It's a quote from Kevin Walsh. There'll be 2 dates on your tombstone, and all your friends will read them. But all that's going to matter is that little dash between them. And I think that one's a good one. The other one is that I really like is from Gandhi. It was published in the Young Indian in 1928. For I can see that in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence I gather that God is life, truth, light. He is love.
Mm. And I quickly want to say thank you for bringing in Khalil Gibran, because one of my gratitudes is Khalil Gibran, because he is Lebanese and I am Lebanese. So I'm proud of my heritage. Okay, Dr. AKULA.
All right. I need to mention about this COVID being a special holiday event for this year, which I think will be remembered for a very long time. There's a lot of excitement about the vaccination, and as you know, I think the first patients may have gotten the vaccination today in Britain, and then we probably getting it, maybe approved getting tomorrow, and so on. And I think the second important thing that is happening is there is actually a wave right now. I'm seeing more patients at West Jeff as well as Touro Hospital. And the good news is that we have treatments available, like remdesivir, monoclonal antibodies, and plasma therapy, or actually dexamethasone, which is supposed to reduce the mortality, death rate by a third. which we didn't have in March. So there's a treatment available. But the third important thing, there's one great scientist said, doctors cannot control this pandemic. Hospitals cannot control this pandemic. Is the communities that will control the pandemic. And the way they do it is by social distancing, mask, and all those safe distance precautions. And I think, I've said it earlier today, but I'm going to reiterate again for this holiday season. Dr. Anthony Fauci, he is the infectious disease doctor of America, and he has gone on record that he anticipates without a proper social measures that I just mentioned to you, we may be looking at over 100,000 deaths, not the infections, deaths following this Christmas early next year. So this is very, very important. So I think, with that saying that, I wanted to offer the Zoom holiday celebration for the families or any individuals, employees, anybody, that we can certainly provide them with a link for a particular time of any of these 3 days of the holidays, or it may be earlier, that we can certainly do a link, just like we did a Zoom link on Thanksgiving Day, where we actually had people call in and kind of wish, greet, and talk and exchange the same things that you would do in person during the holidays. So that is something that we want to offer. So if anybody has any interest, that that's something that we're gonna go ahead and do that. And the second thing is that I would like to maybe offer this hotline that we have, and maybe perhaps a Zoom link of either the Tuesdays or something that they can be available for anybody to seek help during this holiday seasons, for any of their grief needs. So that's, I wanted to keep in there. And Lisa, I think we may be able to provide the link as well as the number in a final version of this presentation. So I think those are a few things that I want to mention, but I certainly invite a lot of people to tell their stories about how life was before COVID and how COVID has impacted them, and to have it recorded, like a podcast, a YouTube presentation, and submit, for National Library of Congress. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close until, if any other, thoughts, words, or anything is gonna come in.
Thank you, Dr. AKULA, for saying that about the vaccine. I'm excited too. Thank you for reminding us. There are good things happening. Thank you. And I don't want to be negative, but I just wish we could come together more as a community and follow the measures. I just see so many people not following the measures, and it saddens me. It's not that hard.